Hello and welcome to another episode of the Appelboom Bites podcast. Welcome everybody. Today's episode number 73 already of the Appelboom Bites podcast, and today's a very special episode with a very special guest and an amazing co-host. First, let me introduce our co-host for today, because it's the one and only Douglas Rathbun, aka Inquiring Minds, all the way from Canada. It's really early in the morning for you. Welcome on the show, Doug. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm very good. I was just telling Brian that I've got a beautiful sunrise going on over here in Calgary.
Yeah.
So it is early in the morning for me, but I'm glad to be here. He's flipping us around.
We can enjoy it as well. So we just keep you all the time. We keep you in the screen like this all the time, and then we can enjoy the sunrise as well. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful. I don't usually see sunrises since I'm retired.
We have a special guest on the show. It's Brian Gray from the Edison Pen Company. Welcome on the show, Brian. Welcome back, actually. How are you?
Thank you. Very good. Thanks for having me. Weather-wise, here in Ohio, things are really strange because we've had the time change, which means that it's very strange because I usually leave work around 5 or 5:30, sometimes 6 o'clock. And here it's getting dark around 4:30 right now. So it's this weird time period where there's about 2 weeks in November, December, where the days are dark way before dinner. So sometimes I leave for work and I don't look outside, and I open up the door to get to my car and I'm like, what the heck happened here? It's already dark outside. So we're at a weird transition with our time zones right now. So very dark already. And it's a weird feeling, but.
Indeed, 4:30 comes around and it's
you don't see any sunlight.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I would also like to welcome everybody here on the chat. Of course, we have here from Atlanta.
There's Wendy Sue.
We have
hi, Wendy Sue
on the show, and we have Wendy Sue from the Rocky Mountains. Good morning. As well, people from Germany, Copperplate 69.
Copperplate.
Hello. Like that. Joshua from Switzerland. It's great to have everybody here. If you have a question for us, just ask it in the comments, and we will try to help you answer that question. But first, we will start with the pen check. And Doc, I would like to ask you to start with your pen check of this week.
The pen check.
I'd be happy to, Joost. Good morning to everybody, and it's lovely to meet you, Brian. We've not met before, but I was anxious to talk to you because I have my one and only beloved Edison Collier in antique marble. I just got this pen in the summer, and every year, just around Christmas, I do a video that shows my top 10 pen experiences of the year. And then I talk about my worst experiences as well. But this pen is going to be in my top 10 list, very close to the top, because this is a magnificent acrylic, turned acrylic in this.
Spoiler alert.
It's called antique marble. But it's a lot of people love this acrylic. A lot of different companies use this kind of acrylic, this amber marble kind of look, and I just adore it. But what is even better on this pen is the 1.1 stub nib that I got with it. And I bought this from the other Brian Goulet. And it came with a medium nib, but I bought the 1.1, to see whether I might like it or not. Well, I don't even know where the medium nib is. This has been on completely, and I eyedroppered it because this is an eyedropperable fountain pen, and it takes almost 5 milliliters of ink. And so it's almost ready for an ink refill, but I write with this all the time, and it's just the most marvelous fountain pen. And thank you, Brian, for making this gorgeous model. It makes me hungry for another one. So we have to talk.
I'm sure we can. Thank you for the very kind words, and thank you for not putting it on your bottom 10 video, that would have scared me. So
Yeah. Yeah. Those are my experiences that weren't so happy.
yeah,
And
understand.
no, this was and continues to be a very happy experience for me. I bring it every week, every time we meet at the Calgary Pen Club. I bring this and pass it around, and everybody does the oohs and the ahs.
Well, that's very
loves it.
flattering. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing.
Yeah.
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 So there are nine pens left of your top 10, Doc.
Yeah, well, one of them is from Diplomat. A couple weeks, just before the beginning. Well, this is the beginning of the lucrative gift giving season. And so just before Christmas, I'll be publishing my list of the best of 2024. Since there's a postal strike here in Canada right now, I won't be receiving anything new. So between now and Christmas, so
I've heard
that's my
about
pen
that.
check. Yes.
Yeah, I think that we do almost everything to Canada through UPS because we get very good rates, and I'm happy to hear that. As long as our Canadian customers don't mind UPS, and most like UPS, then that's our alternative right now. But that's it's a very interesting situation right now. But I digress there. But sorry.
Yeah, no, just because Canada Post is down doesn't mean you can't get your Edison pen. So order yours today.
Still can get there. All right, thank you for your pen check, Doc. Beautiful pen check. All right, Brian, what is your pen check today?
Well, I hope you don't mind if we do another Edison pen, because I have plenty of vintage pens and some others in my collection, but nothing that's brand new. But maybe because I'm very, very proud of this new design, we recently introduced the Elysian, which is this. Now, please ignore. I wanted to show a black pen, but you can see that this has the engraving on here because this is our demonstrator that we bring to pen shows. So the normal will never have this. We just put this on here so that when people come to our table, they know the model and they know what the nib is. So ignore that. And I have another one to show that's kind of in a different, pattern. But I chose black because it shows off the lines a lot better. But this pen is awfully elegant. When you look at it, it looks very simple and minimal. But interestingly, this was very, very difficult for me to design. And I didn't expect it either. I was hoping that I would have this pen ready to introduce probably 3 months before it was actually ready. But the internals of this proved to be about the most difficult pen that I designed, which is kind of counterintuitive because it looks so simple. But the interior was really difficult to pull it off the way that I wanted to. But this was kind of an exercise in curves. And I think that what a lot of people like to look at is when you remove the cap, the section has this curvature shape that is very elegant and tapers outward towards the nib. And then it posts very deep. So in my hand, it feels very nicely like this, but this cap actually posts to a point of where, and this is rare in a fountain pen design, but this actually posts to be a shorter length than when it is capped, which I've never done that before. I know it exists, but it's kind of a rarity in fountain pen design. But I do not post my caps, generally speaking, but I have to post this pen because I love so much how that fits into the web of my thumb, if that makes sense. And it's also about the longest section that we've ever designed. So far, the reaction to this has really been great. A lot of people say that they really love the shape, but then when they hold the pen in their hand, they're kind of like, wow, this is different. So I hope you're okay with a little self-promotion, but since this is so brand new, and I'm not lying, this is now my favorite pen in my collection, even though it's mine, it's my Edison, you know what I mean? So that's the Elysian, and I've been really happy and proud of the design and the way it all turned out, both posted and unposted. It's been just kind of an exercise in curves, and it really turned out nicely. And yes, everybody has said that this is the most common comment that I get is like, this should be a Harry Potter wand, right? It looks like a magic wand in this situation here. And then without that engraving, this is an example that we did out of a Jonathan Brooks Nebula material that I think looks really, really cool. So I don't want to get too far down the self-promotion path. I do have some other interesting pens that we can get to later if you like. They're mostly funny though. So I'll show you those later. They're really cool. But that's my pen that I'd like to share today. And thank you for bearing with perhaps an Edison advertisement.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Of course. No, Brian provided us with a link before the broadcast so we could take a look at the Elysian. And there are some marvelous photos that show all the, looks like 2 or 3 different Jonathan Brooks resins that you have this pen in. And I got to say that I was surprised when I saw the pen to begin with. It almost looks like a desk pen with that small, thin tail on it. But when it's posted, it's a wonderful looking profile.
And that was part of the, boy, I could get really deep into the design as to why that was so difficult. But I don't know how much time we have because I might take a long time. But it was just an issue of...
Go ahead.
Are you sure? All right. So now this may be about 10 minutes. When it comes to fountain pen design, at least from my perspective as a pen maker, I'm always going to design from the section first, then the barrel, then the cap. If working in the opposite direction is a terrible idea, for me anyways, because the nib is the one constant that I can't change. So if I design a great looking cap, then that's going to dictate the barrel and how it mates with the barrel. Then the barrel will dictate the section, right? Now, if I work in that opposite direction and I get to the section and all of a sudden I realize, well, shoot, I just made a pen that has a section that is big and it makes the nib look puny. You know what I mean? So I always start with the nib, which dictates the section, which had the main thing that I wanted was this right here. Now, the first challenge that I had was keeping a reasonable length, but look at how thin this gets at the end, right? How am I going to fit a converter in there?
Yeah.
Because if I take the pen and line it up to where the converter fits, take a look at this diameter of the converter and this diameter right here on the pen. The walls become very thin there. So I could not make this converter go any deeper at all, or else it would break through, right? So the solution was to make the section longer. That way the converter moves up there. But then how long can the section get before it starts to look ridiculous? And how long can the section get before it crashes into the cap? So I got that finished. And now I have a problem where how I want this to post. It has to post. Otherwise, this pen is a bust, if you ask me. And it posts so incredibly deep. If I put my finger here to mark off where this cap, where this ends, and then I bring this out here, you can see that, hopefully you can see, I'm not going to do this right. You can see that there's only literally about a millimeter or 2 of clearance between the end of the cap. So I have literally used up just about every possible square inch of real estate in this pen to pull it off. So I could have remedied that by making the cap longer, but then that throws the aesthetics way off. It looks terrible. And I tried it too. I tried making the barrel longer. It looks terrible. So getting this all to work while keeping the shape that I wanted to was a huge challenge. Probably the most difficult design I came up with that I've designed, so far. And the irony is that it's such a simplistic appearance to the pen. So anyways, that's one of these days I want to create a video, and maybe I can do this with some of my downtime around the holidays. I want to, because I have this whole pen on CAD and I can show a cross section so you can see the internals. And I think that I would like to put together a video someday that will be kind of like maybe even a master class on fountain pen design and how this became what it was and what the challenges were and how I approach this from section to barrel to cap, and how making one change to one cascades to problems to all the others, or hopefully solutions to all the others. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of back and forth and a lot of trying to find how this could work without altering the aesthetics of this shape. The cap couldn't be longer. I don't think it would work. I don't think it would look good at all. The barrel couldn't be longer. It definitely couldn't be shorter. And yet the section still needed to have this shape. And I just love the line that goes from here, there, and then scoops out. Up. So anyways, thank you for entertaining me as I say that. But from a design standpoint, this pen was difficult and it looks so simple. Even I thought it would be simple from the beginning. And then I just ended up with, okay, this won't be ready in June. Hopefully it's ready in August. And then it ended up being ready in, I think, October, so. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Because, thank you.
It's interesting that it's become your favorite fountain pen now too, because it's probably a blend of some things that you worked so hard on getting this design, and then it probably surprised you that the aesthetic of it came out so beautifully. And so, okay, I've solved all these issues, but now I've got a beautiful profile as well.
Yeah.
So I can see why you love it so much.
What surprised me the most is how it felt in my hand posted. Because when it's not posted, the back of the barrel is really thin on the web of my thumb. But then getting that cap with the profile, just it wedged right into the web of my thumb perfectly. So I'm sorry. Again, if this is too much Edison self-promotion, please, you can tell me.
No. It's
but,
good. It's
no.
It's
fascinating
stuff. I just let you do the talking. That's good.
Well, and also, Thomas Edison himself, I just want to say this because your company is named after Thomas Edison.
I know where you're going. Go ahead.
He said that genius was 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration.
Yeah.
So a lot of perspiration going into that wonderful design.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But he was also a huge self-promoter. And maybe
you think? There you go. It's rubbed off on you.
Yeah, I guess so. So, anyways, thank you for listening to my little.
Yes, sorry guys. I really have a big delay in my feed, so I will not do a lot of talking. Hopefully people can still hear me, because I also heard there are some issues with my audio, and still can see me because I need to go to my pen check, of course. Wait, let me enlarge myself a little bit. And my pen check is, of course, also an Edison pen. This is
the Edison trifecta.
Well, why not?
Exactly. This is the Beaumont Unicorn, and the reason I picked this pen today is because, so of course we have Edison pens in the store. We have this beautiful display full with Edison pens, and sometimes my little girls, they come into the store, when they have holidays or when I need to go to the store real quick or whatever. Sometimes they come to the store, and you can imagine they are always pointing out this pen. They always want to play with this pen, hold it. They are not allowed to write with, because they're only like, the oldest turned 6 3 days ago, but so she was 5, and the other one is 3, so they're not allowed to play with. But they want to eat it. They always get their eye, and it's a beautiful piece. Yeah, definitely. They like everything what is pink, and especially this color combination with the turquoise. It's just wonderful.
Gorgeous.
And of course, you can also cap this pen.
Yeah.
And it's a decent size.
It's a beautiful shape.
This is my pen check. Furthermore, I won't do a lot of talking today, because I think it will only interrupt the conversation. But Brian, there was a question for you from our previous guest. That question was for Luca from Scribo, Luca Bogliona. He was supposed to come last week, but there came something in between. So Luca will be our guest next week. But this question was from 2 weeks ago from Giuseppe Acchia from Monte Grappa CEO. And his question was for you, Brian. what is the gift that makes you the happiest to receive for Christmas?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's two answers. One is a new tool. Just we recently acquired we recently acquired a fiber laser here at the Edison Pen Company. So we never really had the ability to etch metal until now, and now we do. It just arrived, and I guess I could call that a Christmas present to myself. But not to get too sappy, but I have a very close relationship with my immediate family, my wife's family, all of our brothers and sisters and uncles, and honestly, just getting together with family is probably the most important thing for me, honestly. So sorry if that's a little bit of a cheesy answer, but
it's a good answer.
I don't always look at it as a gift thing. It's more of like a family and everybody enjoying each other's company and getting together, because sometimes our lives are so hectic that it's very difficult for families to get together more often than just a couple times a year. So I really enjoy my mother's cooking, which is awesome. And I love our families getting together. So if I can be a little sappy, that means a lot more to me than any gift or any material object. Yeah.
Yeah, you're all lucky
really
also that your wife is a partner in your business and a big part of your construction and production. So
Absolutely.
Andrea is a big part of Edison.
Absolutely. If there's 5 of us, 4, including myself and my wife. There's 4 full-time and 1 part-time. And I will say that the beautiful finishes on our pen have nothing to do with me, because usually I'm in my office or I'm running the lathes, and then thankfully my wife and Jake, Aaron, and Sean, they can do a lot of the finesse work when I'm busy doing programming or emails or all that. So yeah, it is a bit of a family affair here, and our employees are also, I mean, I know I'm going to get this wrong, but our employee that has the least amount of years with us, I think, is 6 years. So we all have great chemistry. Jake has been with us for, I want to say 10 years maybe. So it's not just my family at home that I would, my biological real family. The Edison really is a family here too. There's no toxic personalities. Everybody gets along. We really enjoy what we do. I've considered hiring more, but sometimes I think to myself, man, just one toxic personality could ruin all this. So I think we're going to remain small and enjoy what we're doing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Sorry, I may have digressed from that topic a little bit, but I guess I'll count my Gray family, and I'll count my Edison family in that too.
That's good. That's good. I like that answer. All right. That was a question from the previous guest. Now dive a little bit more into Edison. Doc, do you already, because you wrote down, of course, a lot of questions again for Brian.
Oh yeah.
Would you like to
I
start
have a
off
lot
with
of questions.
for Brian?
I've got 3 or 4 questions for Brian, and I'm sort of triaging them here because I want them answered. And I can't ask them all because I take up all the airwaves. But I guess I'm going to ask the technical question first, because we got to this a little bit before we went live, because Brian said he might be able to show some of his vintage pens, and I showed him this Parker Vacuumatic that I just restored. It's 1940. It's a debutante, burgundy pearl. But what I'm fascinated by is I love Vacuumatics and the Vacuumatic filling system. This little pen, this is tiny. Here's the collier next to it. You can see how tiny this little Vacuumatic is. This thing takes 4, almost 5 milliliters of ink. This one takes 2.5 milliliters of ink, and it's a debutante.
Yeah.
And so I've always been fascinated by the Vacuumatic, and you have a filling system that you've revived. It's 77 years old, or 77 years since they discontinued it at Parker, and you've revived it. My question is, why did you revive a 77-year-old filling system?
I have always loved vintage pens from the beginning. I've been doing this for full time, I think 17 years. And towards the beginning, I really wanted to do my best to pay homage and to learn from what American vintage pen makers did, because I really think that a lot of the early American pen makers really knew what they were doing. And a lot of times when I go to a pen show, I'll go to like Richard Lott's table, where Richard a lot of times has just a table that is strewn with miscellaneous parts. And of course, they're not complete pens. They're just scrap. And I love picking through his table and finding something that doesn't have any value, because of course there's some parts there that I wouldn't want to do what I'm about to say, which is I destroy them in the sense of I want to cut it on a cross section and look inside and see how they designed it. I want to kind of tear apart junk vintage pens, not expensive and good ones, so that I can learn from what they did. And so I did have the pump filler. I called it a pump filler, but it was essentially my modern take on the Vacuumatic, which maybe I'd like to think that I made some improvements on it. Now, over time, we discontinued the pump filler. And here's the reason, is that I found that, you know, even with inks that I recommended, and this is just true of almost any vintage pen that uses a latex sac, latex is really not going to last in the very long term. I found that even with the safest inks that I recommended, we had basically about 3 to 5 years is how long a sac would last. I'm sorry, I should say a diaphragm in this case. The Vacuumatic uses a diaphragm. And so quite honestly, I just got sick of repairing them. And I've always had the attitude that if you buy an Edison pen, it should be a buy it for life thing. You know, I mean, with a few exceptions of maybe if you drop the pen or something like that, I design these to be passed down. I truly do.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that I like the idea that everybody needs to think about when is that diaphragm going to fail, because it will eventually fail. So what I did was, and actually, hang on a second, let me yell at an employee to grab something for me really quick, because then I can show you easily. There's a demonstrator I can show you.
Well, and I have a follow-up question for him that really relates to this, because there is a way to take a Vacuumatic, like with the diaphragm, and make it modern with a piston. And so I think there's a way he could get back to that pump filler without using latex on it. So I'd be interested to find out whether he ever thought about you replacing that diaphragm with a piston. I know there's a Chinese company that does it.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. I wish I had known, and I would have had this on hand earlier. So
I've been giving you a follow-up to questions about the latex as well, asking whether you ever thought about replacing the diaphragm with a piston. There we go.
That's what I went to grab.
Yeah.
So basically, the pump filler became what I now call the draw filler. And the draw filler is exactly that. It's a Vacuumatic, and this is a clear pen, so it's very difficult to see, but there is a breather tube in there. And then rather than a diaphragm, it has this piston that works with a repeating action. And then this piston has chemically resistant O-rings, so ink does not matter. And the funny thing is that this led to a lot of advantages over a diaphragm. The piston mechanism displaces a lot more volume than what a diaphragm does. So it fills faster, it empties faster, and it fills all the way up to
the top
here. Because there's so much displacement on the last stroke, you can draw ink way beyond the end of the breather tube, which normally that's where the ink would stop. But this displaces so much more volume than what a diaphragm did that it's really, really very advantageous. And then that also took the ink capacity of this from 2 milliliters to about 2.5 milliliters, which is pretty big for a self-filling fountain pen. That's about, I mean, with the exception of like a conid giraffe, where they've made it purposely to have a really, really huge barrel, this is about as big as a self-filling pen gets as far as capacity goes. There could be exceptions that I'm not aware of or that I'm forgetting, but 2.5 milliliters in a non-eyedropper pen is pretty huge.
Yeah.
And then back to you said earlier that your Vacuumatic had a large capacity, and you're kind of surprised by that. The reason for that is because this is a repeating action. It isn't a piston filler that you do one stroke and it's full. The repeating action exchanges air for ink, many, many times. In the case of this, it takes about 6 or 7 compressions to fill it.
Yeah.
The fluid dynamics of that mechanism makes this fill a lot more than a conventional piston filler. It's a very unique mechanism, and I was very happy to re-engineer this with a piston mechanism because, first of all, it would save us from all the repairs that we need to do. I can stand behind this long term. We've had this out for probably about 5 years now, maybe 6, and I think there's only been maybe 2 or 3 that have ever come back for us for a repair related to the filling system, as opposed to the pump fillers. I would say a lot of them have come back to me to be repaired, and most people, they opt to have us rebuild the barrel entirely as a draw filler, because when they say that, hey, I've got this old pump filler of yours and I really would like to get it fixed, I give them the option. I tell them why it happened. The diaphragms aren't reliable past 3 to 5 years. And if you'd like to never experience this problem again, I have a better option for you. And then we rebuild the barrel for them as a draw filler. So I'm very happy when people let me know that, because I'd rather that I know that our pens out there are still faithfully serving their owners, and the pump filler was not something that I wanted to stand behind. Keep in mind, it took me 3 to 5 years of practical experience to really understand that, well, shoot, these diaphragms are not reacting the way that I thought they would, even with very safe inks. Over the years, I don't know if the latex changed or if the inks changed. Or here's another thing, is that now a vintage expert will know more about this than I do. But I think that when you look at Vacuumatics and vintage pens that had diaphragms and sacks and that used latex components, I think that back in the golden age, the 40s, 50s, and 60s, I think that those fountain pens were considered either more disposable than what they are today. So if your sack failed, who cares? I'll just get another one for $3. Or it was just understood that I got to send this out for repair every so often. And maybe that's it. I don't think inks have changed. I don't think the latex changed. I think that just those filling systems are not necessarily intended to be something that is service free for the life of the pen. And I didn't like that once I learned it. Does that make sense?
I think that Parker discontinued it in 48 because of exactly those problems, that there was no longevity to it. And they replaced it with the aerometric, which has the plyglass or vinyl kind of material that's not reactive with ink. Well, not as much.
And honestly, I'm convinced that if Parker would have kept up their Vacuumatic ambitions, I'm convinced they would have evolved to this idea here. It wasn't that difficult for me to conceptualize. How can I make a mechanism that's not going to involve latex? Well, a piston,
And they didn't have silicone in 1948, so.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
So the silicone O-rings that you have on the piston are what allows it to slide up and down inside the barrel, and they're not reactive with modern inks. So there's your longevity right there.
Thank you. That's information that I wasn't aware of. I don't even know what's the history of O-rings, and of course they've existed for quite a while because they would be in engine blocks. But what about the chemical composition of O-rings? I don't know the answer to that. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think the modern formulations and modern technology, of course, the tolerances you need for a piston are much greater than they are for an old diaphragm in a 1948 vacuum.
That's true. Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for the answer. I was going to ask her what's the difference between a draw filler and a piston and a
really good question.
A pump filler, but that answered it. Yep.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yep.
Really good question. Wendy also has a really good question for you, Brian, because Wendy is asking, I've never tried an Edison pen. What do you suggest I investigate as the first Edison experience? And also, will you be at the Philly Pen Show?
We will not be at the Philly Pen Show, but we will be at the Baltimore show, which is right after. Every year, we close down the last 2 weeks of December. I believe in work-life balance out here. And quite frankly, sometimes this job can get really, really tedious. So we always give our employees a lot of flexibility at the end of December, which means prepping for the Philly show is very difficult. I mean, when we get ready for a pen show, it's a solid month of manufacturing. And then it's also a solid week or two afterwards to get back on track. So pen shows take a lot out of us. We won't make Philly, but we will be in Baltimore, which is March, I believe. I think so. So anyways, Baltimore not being that far from Philly, if you can make it down to that show, we will be there. As far as trying an Edison pen, if you've never tried one before, I would definitely recommend starting with our production line. And for those that don't know, it's kind of unique to our company. I'm not sure if there's many other pen companies that do that, but we have two lines of pens. One is the production line, and we sell those through Joost at Appelboom. And basically with those, we have 4 or is it 5 models? Oh my gosh, how am I spacing out on this? I think it's 4 models. It could be 5. The funny thing is,
4 or 5 models.
Yeah, my employees are the ones that deal with the production line, and I deal with the signature line. So I'm kind of spacing out on this right now. You know, we divide and conquer. So the production line is, we have models and we have various materials, but there are no customizations. So what we do is we can make those assembly line style, and we can make 50 at a time. And that economy of scale and the fact that we have retailers across the globe that distribute them for us allows us to get a lower price point. So those pens will be $149. There's no, okay, and then the signature line is you contact me directly. We figure out a custom pen. We send emails back and forth. We figure out what's perfect for you, and then we make that pen for you. Now that is that's a bit more expensive because of course there's no economy of scale. We're making one pen at a time. It's totally custom made just for you. And those pens will start in the range of $225 and can get all the way up to, you know, $600, $700, $800, depending upon filling systems, bells, whistles, roll stock. You know, I mean, generally speaking though, with a steel nib, the signature line will be in the range of $225 to about $325. So that's a good, most people go with steel nibs, so that's a good way to go. There's no difference in the quality between the two lines. The only difference is that we can make one line faster with the same attention to quality control because we're not making one pen, we're making 50 pens all in a row at a time and having those ready to go to our retailers. So most people, I would recommend trying our signature line first because the overall quality and feel will be the same as our signature line pens, but you'll be able to experience an Edison pen at a much nicer price point. And sometimes we refer to our production line as our gateway drug because you love your Edison production pen, and then it's like, okay, I got to go totally custom, and now I got to get a draw filler, and now I got to get a roll stop.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah, and now
that's
I want to get.
Gonna do.
Yeah, and I want to choose my material. I want to use a Jonathan Brooks resin. That's really, I mean, so that's where the signature line comes in. So I would definitely recommend you look at the production line. I would say that the Collier is our most popular model. That would probably be a good, and there's 5 materials to choose from there too in the production line. And then the rest, the
other one's a signature? Is the big one a signature?
The Collier Grande is signature line only. So the Collier's probably our most popular model in the production line, and that would be a good one to go with if you don't post your pens. If you post your pens, you might want to take a look at the Beaumont or the Comet. The Beaumont is a relatively smaller pen, and that's what Joost showed us earlier. And then the Comet is medium-sized and also does post. So I would recommend the Collier if you don't care about posting, the Beaumont if you like smaller and you want it to post, or the Comet and you'd like a medium-sized pen that would also post. Here we go.
And I can see on your website that it's 4 models in the production line.
Thank you.
On it, the Menlo, the Beaumont, and the Collier.
Yeah, and then the Comet in there as well as well too.
The Comet.
So, yeah. That's funny. You know that better than I do. Isn't that crazy?
I'm just looking at the website.
I know that's how. That sometimes I swear I need to go out and ask my crew some of the most mundane, dumb questions that I just forget because I focus so much on emails and the signature line, and they focus on the production line. So sometimes I'm asking these ridiculous questions that I should know.
Well, it's all normal. It's all normal.
I got the question. A lot of pens, are you confused sometimes to choose which pen you want and when it's needed? Honestly, I have probably only 2 or 3 pens inked up at one time, and they get used every day. One is on my desk. One is out at our shipping station because I personally sign every letter that goes with every pen that we ship. And usually it's kind of funny because you might be surprised. A lot of times my personal writing pens are the ones that were mistakes. And the reason is because, hey, I mean, this pen turned out great. Why wouldn't I sell it? So for instance, this is my personal Elysian that I've been using since we launched it. I don't know if you can see it, but do you see that there's a tiny, tiny gap right there between the center band and the acrylic material? It's hard to see in this, but there's a tiny gap, right? So when we made this pen, we epoxy the center band onto the cap, and somehow this one didn't get pushed in all the way. So my daily writers are oftentimes either prototypes that we haven't announced yet, and I want to get practical experience with it before we announce it, or mistakes, because what else would I do with this? I'm not going to throw it in the trash, but I also can't really sell it. It's not up to our standards. Yeah, of course. we get that a lot, actually. So, how do I choose? It's usually a more utilitarian thing as a manufacturer. When I choose the pens that I want to write with, every so often it's one that is just beautiful and does exactly what I want it to. But a lot of times the pen that I'm choosing is one that I want to put through the paces because I'm not sure about a certain aspect about the pen. For instance, this is one that's in my daily rotation. It's a Jameson that uses a number 8 Jovo 14 karat nib. Now, these are out, but they're being redesigned. So the reason that I'm using this right now is because we have not sold a lot. I need to do some specific alterations to make this work until the final design is ready from Jovo. So in order for me to feel comfortable to sell this nib to our customers, I want to be writing with it every day to make sure that there's no surprises. Since this version right here has a different feed than what it will eventually have. So if I'm going to sell these nibs right now as they are, I want to test this on my own every day and make sure that I'm not going to send something to a customer that needs to be altered later for whatever reason. So a lot of times my choices and what I'm going to pick is more a utilitarian thing in the fact that I need to explore if a certain aspect about a pen is reliable because I don't know the answer yet, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's maybe a boring answer. It's not always my most fabulous pen that I choose. It's the one that I need to learn more about. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. We have a question here from Nambi. Does Edison Pens have distributors?
Yes,
we interested to buy your vac filler pen. I hope Joost open ship to the UK. Of course, we're in the Netherlands, but vac fillers are not part of the production line. So you have to go to the signature line, and then you have to reach out to Brian directly.
Yep. I would since Joost is our wonderful host here, check in with Joost on our production line. We do have the writing desk in the UK as a distributor. However, Since Joost is our nice host here, I will say check with him first unless there's a reason to stick in the UK. But Joost is correct in that all of our production lines that would be carried by our retailers in Europe will all be converter fillers. So if you wanted a draw filler, then you'll contact me directly and we'll handle it as a custom direct sale.
Let's see. Gingery is asking. Gingery had 2 questions. The first one, will Edison be at the Chicago Pen Show?
Yes, we will never miss the Chicago show. That's one of our favorites, and it's not very far away either. It's only about a 5-hour drive.
Perfect.
Which makes it
And
really
and
nice.
the second question is, will you bring those mistakes pens to the Chicago Pen Show? Because my most expensive fountain pen cost $35.
Yeah, I understand. And every so often when I mention, how our mistakes end up being on my desk, the answer is no, and I apologize. And the main reason is because I don't want there to be imperfect work out there. So, if what you're asking is, could I buy this at a discount because there's a minor flaw? I'm sorry, but what if I sold this to someone and then they sold it to another and another, and well, this Edison looks kind of crappy because of this, and nobody knows why? Sometimes that bugs me. So we really don't do any discounts, and the mistakes usually
makes a lot of
remain.
sense.
Yeah, the mistakes usually remain hidden in my desk, which I could probably show a bunch right here. So, but yeah, I apologize if there was a way that we could figure out a discount with that, but I just don't like imperfect work to be out there. Even if the owner is willing to tell everybody that, hey, this was a mistake. So keep that in mind as you look at this Edison pen.
You should engrave it on the pen. Mistake 1, mistake 2, mistake 3.
This is crappy Edison pen. Disclaimer. Yeah.
That's why a lot of companies don't allow seconds. Like I'm a guitar player, and I know that Gibson and Martin don't allow seconds out in the marketplace because it just makes their brand look bad.
Sure.
So
yeah, and that makes sense, and I can definitely respect that.
Yeah.
All right, Doug, we're almost here at the end of the show. I have some new products, but I will not talk about them today because, well, my connection is not so good. So I'll leave them for next week. But Doug, you have a question for Brian, right?
Now, don't forget, before we're done, I do want to show a couple of pens that are just really, really fun. So
let's do that.
We'll
leave
5 minutes
because you've already answered a couple of my other questions.
All right, got it.
Your other answers. So
all right, first I want to show. Now, this may be my favorite pen. Remember, I said it's always mistakes, but I love my Sharpie. All right.
Okay.
I love my Sharpie.
You
marker,
heard it here first, folks. Buy a Sharpie.
Except now, look carefully. That says there's the Edison logo, and it says Edison Pen Menlo.
Menlo.
It's not a Sharpie.
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
Wow.
So, and you're not being sued by Sharpie.
Well, we posted this on Instagram a while ago, and I can't believe the number of people that said, "Oh my gosh, I got to buy that." But for legal reasons, this is just fun. Our employee Jake got the idea. He created this pen, and I think it's awesome. The funny thing is, it does resemble a Sharpie so much. There's been a few times that we lose track of this, and it ends up in our Sharpie, like our cup where Sharpie markers are. And a couple times I grabbed this and yanked on it, not knowing that it was a fountain pen. So anyways, that's just a fun one. I wish we could sell these because I swear that there's so many people that would love to have this interesting pen. But, just for legal reasons.
Have you spoken to Sharpie at all about it? Because they probably
no. I mean, honestly, I'm sure that the Sharpie legal team is a lot better than the Edison legal team, which is non-existent. So
yeah, no doubt.
Now, the other one is a Crayola marker, and there's going to be no surprise with this one that, of course, it's actually a fountain pen. So we actually call this the Grayola instead of Crayola. So these are just fun. I thought we bring these to pen shows just to entertain people, but I thought that would be fun just to show these again. I
love the creativity on those.
I truly wish. Well, and all credit to our employee Jake. Jake designed both of these, and I thought it was fantastic when he did that. But I truly wish that we could find a way to sell these but I know that there's a lot of people that'd love to have them, but I just can't do it for legal reasons.
I know Joost's daughters will want one of those. That's for sure.
Yeah, that would work out well. Yeah.
Definitely.
So okay, so
thank
you.
Yeah, but
Thanks for entertaining my
if you
fun
reach out to Sharpie and go for a collaboration, you don't think that would work?
I honestly have no idea how that would work, but you know, I mean, we're a small company with 5 people, and approaching them with this, it would be such a huge undertaking. Yep. But not only that, what if they did agree to it? What cut would they want? You know, I mean, it's not like we're starving for work. And then if we did, like, let's say that Sharpie went for it and said, "Hey, let's manufacture these." They'd probably want 5,000 of them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, I mean, I could handle it, but you know, I mean, making 5,000 pens in a small operation like us might not work. So it was just a fun thing. Excuse me. It was just a fun thing that Jake did. It's always a nice conversation piece, but there's no ambition for us to follow up any more than that. So it's just cool.
I did have another question for you about sourcing your materials, because we saw the Jonathan Brooks resins and so forth, but not all your stuff is Jonathan Brooks. Where do you source your acrylics, and also where do you source your nibs? Are they all JoWo, or do you make some of your own?
Nib wise, all of our number 6 are number 5s, and the number 8 solid gold nibs are JoWo. Then the number 8 steel nibs are by Magna Carta, which I've been very happy with. I'm very happy to finally have a good quality number 8 steel nib. Then as far as acrylics go, we have Jonathan on board, and then we're about to make some announcements here. You heard it here first. There is a material maker named Tim Crow, who is with the Turnt Pen Company. We're just this week, we're going to receive a big shipment from him. And so we'll probably make an announcement that we're now inventorying his stuff. Now, we can make a pen from any custom material maker if you buy it and send it to us. But there are certain ones that we always keep inventoried because they're so popular and we want to have them ready to go immediately. Jonathan is one. Tim Crow with the Turnt Pen Company is about to be announced soon. And then also Lisa Marie with Poorly Controlled. We just got a shipment from her. And stay tuned, because there might be a holiday limited edition with her materials that might be coming out in the next week or so. So stay tuned to the Edison site if you're interested.
I'll keep an eye on that, yeah.
So those would be what we call craft makers. In other words, independents just like us that are kind of doing the thing as an independent craft material maker. And then as far as like normal, so that's all pretty much Alumilite or variations of an epoxy-based material. And because an artisan like those 3 can... It's kind of like the Edison Pen Company versus a huge pen company. We can take the time to make special customizations, and these craft material makers can take the time to make things that the large acrylic factories wouldn't bother with. You know, so we find that those sell really well. Now, as far as acrylics go, which I would just call PMMA or polymethyl methacrylate, that's just a way of saying normal acrylic. We have sources in Italy, Taiwan, and India. So, and then there's some domestic sources, but a lot of times we don't always order from them unless we need small quantities, because we usually buy in big batches, you know, and it makes sense to go straight to the manufacturer and get a better price and higher quantities. So I guess that's the simple answer to the question. Is there's some great material makers in Italy, Taiwan, and a new one in India that's doing some really, really good stuff as well. So our normal acrylics are coming from generally those sources. But when it comes to custom pens, if I look at everything and like if I search through our galleries, you know, all the materials that we have available to us, I'm pretty sure that I came up with a rough estimate of like 800 different materials that we can get. It's kind of, when people come to our site and look for a custom pen, sometimes the most common, maybe not complaint, but comment that I get is that, holy smokes, there's so much to choose from. How on earth do I narrow down these choices? And then when we're trading emails for a custom pen, I'm always helpful to say, okay, you like blue? Do you want to swirl? Do you want to flake? And then I give plenty of suggestions, so there's ways to narrow it down, but we have a lot that we can choose from.
Just to let people know that if you go to the Edison website and look at the gallery, you will literally fall into the acrylic rabbit hole. And you will spend hours, as page after page after page of gorgeous acrylics.
The last time
I spent a couple of hours yesterday.
we are every week we are updating our galleries with new pens that we made that week for our custom. And I've been doing this for 17 years now. I'm not exaggerating when I say that the last time I checked the metrics in our galleries, there's 18,000 photos of pens. So it's been a wild ride. And sometimes I look at that and I go, how on earth did I get 18,000? Now, keep in mind, each pen, we take 2 photos, sometimes 3. So it's not like there's 18,000 pens that we've manufactured over the years. But there's a lot to see. And then if anybody is feeling daunted by that.
Still a lot. Very impressive.
Well, if anybody's feeling daunted by looking through the galleries, the center of every page is a search window. And in that search window, you can type in blue. It'll show you everything with a keyword or a caption of blue. You can type in ebonite. You can type in blue ebonite. You know what I mean? So it's daunting. There's tons of photos, but you can narrow things down by typing in the search window.
Now you tell me.
Yeah.
I would have saved 2 hours yesterday. Just blue.
Yeah.
All right,
That's
guys,
great.
we're really
Good
here
advice.
at the end of the show a little bit. But before we're ending, Brian, I would like to ask you to come up with a question for our next guest to start a podcast with. So what is your question for our next guest?
Who is the next guest? Or do you know? And what do they like? What's their specialty? What's their role? Because that might have
I'm not going to tell you. I already announced it at the beginning of the show, but you didn't pay attention apparently. But
yeah, I know. Okay, we did not prepare
cruel.
this
You're cruel.
I have no idea what my question would be at this point.
It's Luca from Scribo.
Okay.
I broke it. It's Luca from Scribo.
Oh geez, I don't know. My question would be, what is your favorite vintage pen from the 60s? Is that a good question? I'm sorry. I wish I had some time to prepare. Maybe I could
That's
come
a
up with
good
something
question.
better. Yeah.
No, that's fine. Yeah, it's great. I have an answer already.
I like it.
You do. It's in your hand.
All right.
No. These are from the 40s.
Right.
Oh, shoot. See, that's where I'm not a vintage expert. There are some times that I'm at a pen show talking to the vintage experts, and they're like, Brian, no, that's not right. So yeah,
mine would be a Schaefer PFM, is my 1960 pen.
That is very good, and that's the whole pneumatic concept too. Yeah, which I love.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's wonderful. All right, guys. I would like to thank you both for carrying this show, kind of a little bit without me, because with all the technical issues. Brian, thank you a lot for all the explanations. And
absolutely. And one quick thing, I have not been able to pay attention to the questions. If anybody has a question,
it's always lovely to hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. But I didn't mean to interrupt. There's a lot of questions that I wasn't paying attention to because I'm talking like a madman. If anybody has a question that was not answered, feel free to send me an email and I'll be happy to follow up with you. Sometimes it's hard to keep up with every question in the comments, so feel free to reach out to me and I'll address any question. Thank you.
You'll be getting one from me.
Of course.
Wonderful. All right. Doug, thank you so much for being the co-host again.
Thank you.
Again, you are amazing. Next week,
we
will be back. We will have Luca on the show. But this upcoming weekend, we have a special episode of the Appelboom Bites podcast. Doug will not be the co-host. It will be Stephen Brown who's going to be the co-host, and the guest is going to be Drew Brown. So it will be an entire Brown show here. Maybe I'll have to change my name to Joost Brown as well to jump in this whole situation. But it will be this Sunday at 4:30 European time, Amsterdam time, in the afternoon. So it's everybody in the earth in the whole world can join in, because for Steven it's early. I'm not sure what time it is for you then, Doc, over there.
It's early. Yeah, it's 9
early.
o'clock a.m. right here, right now. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So 7.
So
yeah,
it's
it'd be
8:30
7
more or less.
Yeah.
So everybody, I would like to thank you as well for joining us in the chat of YouTube and of Facebook. If you're watching this after that we're live, make sure to follow us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube as well. Head over to Inquiring Minds on YouTube and find all Doc his videos over there, and also head over to the Edison social media so you can find even more prettier pens to discover even more. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you again next week.